Greetings and welcome. This is Damascena here. And I really wanted or felt inspired to come on today because I wanted to talk a little bit about the mysteries of the Venus cycle. And I wanted to speak uh, about a couple of things. One, distinctly where we are right now, just so we can understand kind of where we are on this beautiful star map. And to help make some like differentiations between the different parts of the cycle and what we do in Skydancer, and to talk a little bit about the astrology. And so, first, let me just check in from a very human level. So, we have just exited or are on the way out of the underworld, Venus's underworld phase. And I had my very own kind of, gosh, at this point, I'm going to start calling it a psychedelic underworld journey with pain in my body and in my back. And a lot of it really, yeah, I don't want to just say it was energetic because that feels sort of dismissive of what the experience has been like, but it was my body that brought me down into the underworld, we'll put it that way. And it kept me in the underworld the whole time. And so one of the practices that we work with inside of Skydancer is a practice that was given to me by my teacher, and it is called following the energy. And following the energy means that we really stay attuned, right, to uh, what is true for our body, what is true for our life, what is true for the moment. And so I have not been actively marketing Skydancer in the way I might have had I not had this underworld experience. And, I'm just in these very tentative stages about coming out. And so I've been really trying to pay attention to, um, whether or not I have the capacity to come on and speak. And this morning, I'm trying to just uh, get out and take some walks and like be outside in nature. This morning, I felt inspired to um, come on. I had one of those walks that filled me with inspiration and kind of things I wanted to speak to. And so that is why I'm here today. And I'm hoping that I'll be able to make a few videos to come on and speak with you all about the epic journey that we're going to have in Skydancer this round, and just, like all of the ways in which Venus curates for us this really um, unique and individualized curriculum through her sky story for us each time around. So, as a practitioner or a facilitator, um, and as somebody who is the curator or queen of my own domain on the internet, I like to think of like my internet spaces, so my website and the Mighty Network spaces as my own etheric temples. And those are spaces that I curate myself. And so they're like my own domain or my own queendom, right? And one of the things that, Skydancer and all of my work is in service to is the mystery of incarnation, right? And I think a lot of that stems from the fact that I was adopted, and adoptees who came up, through the mid 80s or so, were all adopted in what they called closed adoptions. And so our lives before we were placed with our, permanent families were a mystery. And so I had parents, of course, and a family, and I always knew I was adopted, but like my origins were a mystery. And so I have to say that I have been in this lifelong kind of like tantra almost, like real dance or relationship with the mystery of incarnation. What are we doing here? Why are our lives set up the way they are? What is the purpose? What is the mission that we're here on? Why is everybody's life so different? And, this sent me through, a multitude of corridors of education, multitude of different kind of like hardships, karmas, just holding this question, being on, holding a question is like being on a quest, right? And so like being on a quest to delve into what this mystery is. And so, I think, one of the things that underlies all of my work is probing at that mystery. And when we talk about mystery schools, I think the difference between mystery schools and any other kind of education is that, we're never going to find concrete answers. We're not doing scientific studies. We're not weighing and measuring anything. We are literally kind of like trying to peel back the veil or look through the mists in a sense at a mystery. And so we plumb at it, we unfold it, we let it blossom, we live inside of it, we hold inquiry, we stay in states of curiosity and wondering, we play, we experiment, right? But we don't really come up with um, answers necessarily, not from and like an external perspective. We come up with answers that kind of arise through this process of journeying the mystery. And one of the things I found as an astrologer in the early years was that Venus has a really unique map for plumbing the mystery of incarnation. Like she provides this very holographic and holistic way of kind of approaching the question. And so, for those of you who don't have a very good handle yet on the Venus cycle, Venus, for lack of better words, and just to be very general about it, has three main phases, right? She rises at the beginning of her cycle in her retrograde phase as the what we call the morning star. And you guys may have heard that term morning star many times. It's related to the word Lucifer. And so there's many books and movies that include the word. In the Bible, it is said Jesus is he of the morning star. We can find a lot of connections between Venus Mystery School work and the Christian tradition, the Egyptian tradition, the Babylonian tradition. And so the morning star phase, the energy of the morning star phase is quite imminent. And we think of it as ruled kind of by Taurus, but it's got this fiery aspect to it. So I always kind of say, it's got this Aries kind of Taurus energy to it. And it is the area or part of the cycle where we delve into, or it's like the descent part of the cycle. And so we delve into the mysteries of immanence and matter, right? And who we are as humans and the energetic direction of the morning star cycle. It starts out very bright, very kind of juicy and voluptuous. And, the energy is very much like Sekhmet, right? There's like almost a quality of confrontation or war. There's this righting of wrongs inside of the energy of Venus as the morning star phase, and then she's very close to the Earth at this time, and so her influence is very strong. And then as she moves away from the Earth, because all planets, especially Venus, she's got a very round cycle instead of elliptical, so it's not egg-shaped, it's very round. So all planets move, like away from their conjunction between the Earth and the Sun, around to the other side of the Sun. All of the inner planets do, Mercury and Venus, and so they end up on the other side of the Sun, so very far away from us. And when Venus is very far away from us, she drops into her underworld phase. And that is the part of the Venus cycle that we are just emerging from now. And so when Venus rises as evening star, she's still very far away from the Earth. She's low on the horizon and just very faint. And I like to say that Venus comes in with this kind of sense of a whisper, and she's got this more angelic tone to her. And when we're on the morning star phase, Taurus in general is very much about this incarnation. Like, we think about Taurus as the bull, and the bull, one of the root words for the bull is carne, right? And so we get this kind of like incarnation. It's such a beautiful sign, and I could spend hours just waxing poetic about the mysteries of Taurus. But there is this sense of, if Venus ruled values, right? She does, not if she did. Venus rules values. In Taurus, we inspect the values that we hold towards ourselves. And we look at the body, our own incarnation. There's this kind of like marriage between the inner and outer that's looked at Taurus, but it isn't, it's very early in the zodiac sign wise. We've only got Aries before it. And so it's still very concerned with the self, like the smaller self, our humanity. Who are we? What are we doing here? And so we think of that as ruling the morning star side. And so, when we work in Sky Dancer on the descent side of the cycle, we're very involved with these questions around self and, and our own humanity and our own incarnation. And then when Venus takes on the evening star phase, when she steps into or rises, her heliacal rise was yesterday, which is part of why I was hoping to get on one of these days and speak. When she rises as evening star, she takes on a more universal energy. She is we might think of the nature of Libra. And the Libra Mystery School is one of my favorites. One of the archetypes of Libra, and I've discussed this in another video, is Mot, right? And Mot is really about cosmic balance and cosmic harmony. And when we kind of plumb that a little deeper, like, what does that mean? That sounds very general. It's in the tarot, Libra is ruled by the judgment card, right? And what is judgment? And or in the zodiac by the scales, it's like that weighing and balancing of karma and how nature always seeks balance. And one of the things that, Libra speaks to on a more collective or mundane level is like how we make the laws, the man-made laws of the universe and judge them, how we set up civilization. What are the values that we hold, not just for ourselves, but, towards society? How do we work together in harmonious ways? Libra is the seventh house, and it kind of and it sits across from the first house. And the energy of the first house is that I am energy of Aries. Libra rules that idea of like other, right? And so what are the values we hold towards others, towards relationships, towards how we want society run? It's the house of open enemies, even, and in mundane astrology. And so there's this way that we start to get the sense that like there's something bigger than us going on. And so when we're in the evening star phase of our journey, Venus is low on the horizon. And so we call this her ascent side. And so she's dealing with some of the bigger questions about incarnation. So we're not just sort of like so self-focused, but we're focused about on how we as individuals fit into a larger ecology, right, of the universal plan, and how we can affect, right, as beings, like as purposeful beings that we're seated here. Like there is an intention for each of our lives. We would not have gotten a body and incarnated. It is said that to be blessed enough to get a body and to even incarnate on this dimension of reality, this is a place that a lot of souls want to go. And so to even be given an opportunity to be here is a gigantic blessing. And each and every one of us, through, like we know with astrology or different types of spiritual technology, we understand that each soul is unique and each soul is fulfilling a divine purpose, right? And so On the evening star side of the Venus cycle, we're really interested in plumbing that part of the question about the mystery of incarnation. And we've got this gorgeous zodiacal map that we use. We use the chakras. All of the chakras are connected to the planets. And so there is this, um, we're always kind of looking in general at the background at this kind of larger general question of like, as above, so below, as within, so without. So, how is the above what the star map is doing? How is it being animated through me? And how can I feel the different astrological influences being like in my body so that I know what energy I'm bumping up against. These are things that we learn in Sky Dancers so that we understand how to work with the cosmos and with this kind of ecosystem or this ecology rather than working against it. We can harness the momentum, right, of the energies of creation, of the energies of the feminine, of which space, just actual space, is one of them. And so the evening star side is very different. This journey is it's different, but it's holistic. Like the descent is important, probing all of those questions is important, just beginning to make space for our humanity to exist and to exist outside of the matrix maps that we were given as children. So exist outside of our conditioning and the expectations that were set up for us but to move ourselves from that trajectory onto the trajectory of the map of our soul is huge. It's hugely important to our specific incarnation. And so that is one way of many to look at the Venus cycle. And so we've talked on a very meta level, and I want to kind of bring it in a little deeper and speak specifically to Sky Dancer and my work in particular. So we just held an underworld initiation, and in a lot of work with the feminine, and when you're working in the rose line, you are often working with um, the energies of the creator, preserver, destroyer. This is like a basic template of feminine work, right? Um, for instance, like Mary Magdalene, right, as in a sense the destroyer, this one who can help with disillusionment. She walked beside Jesus. She walked beside him to the cross, sat beside the tomb and wept and taught us about grief, right? She had inside of her 7 devils cast out. So she's very much related to the energies of the descent or the disillusion or the dismantling or destruction and the underworld. And inside, so for me in particular, Venus spends about 60 to 90 days in the underworld, which isn't very long, to journey with underworld material. So we spend quite a bit of time on the morning star side of the cycle preparing. I break up the chakras into kind of 3 sections in a sense. And so we deal with the kind of cosmic chakras, which are the upper chakras. And then we deal with like the emotional, instinctual, somatic body level chakras and the intelligences of the body and the middle chakras. And then the lower chakras, the sacral, the root, and then what we might call the earth star chakra are the shamanic chakras. And so we spend about 3 months on the morning star side, just in this kind of like shamanic portal, getting ready to go down into the underworld. But this year, we spent 8 weeks in the underworld, and I personally spent that amount of time myself in the underworld. I hadn't been planning on having as deep of an underworld journey as I did, and I'm just only now, and isn't it always like this, where it's in hindsight that we understand why something happened? We just kind of have to be in the midst of what's happening when it's happening, um, and not really make meaning out of it, or we kind of end up in the struggle and the suffering longer, right? Um, but 8 weeks, I digress, isn't a very long time to teach an underworld experience. And so we what we do is we spend um, part of the Evening Star journey really integrating all that happened in the underworld. And in the underworld, Venus happens to be on the far side of the sun, and her energy is what we say or call occulted by the sun. And so her influence isn't very strong. And so we aren't dealing with Venus and her astrology as much when I teach underworld. We're really working with the deep underworld themes. And so I wanted to say, one of the things that I wanted to say on this video is that the work in underworld is very different than the work in Skydance or on a morning star or evening star side of the ascent, right? We just went in, we did 4 modules or 4 underworld activations. We were given underworld empowerments. We did a bunch of like shamanic journeying in underworld. And um, on the morning star and evening star side, it's much more spacious. So we're dealing with one chakra, one planet, um, one astrological kind of lesson or theme and component and mystery every month, right? So there's much more spaciousness inside of um, Skydancer's, flanked morning star and evening star modular phases, if you like, than there is in Underworld. It's really set up very differently. So if anyone took Underworld and thought that was paced quickly, I just wanted to reassure you all that one, that people who sign up for the Evening Star phase are going to have access to those Underworld modules the entire journey, so that if they find themselves having an underworld experience, because those can really come up anytime depending on our chart and different factors in our lives, we can't manufacture an underworld experience, right? We can't. And so people who joined underworld really joined to have the skills to meet the underworld when it arose, in their lives at any given time, and they can happen at any time. It just so happened that mine coincided with the underworld, and I can find that astrology in my chart. And other people, there were a few people who had real underworld experiences happening, and then others who were there to, have a map to travel the underworld. So if you sign up for Skydancer in the Evening Star phase, you will have access to the underworld material, and we will officially begin our Evening Star journey when the moon and Venus meet in Leo, and Venus is visible, and she forms her first chakra gateway at the root. And if you don't understand what I'm saying, that's okay. We have in Skydancer, when you join the container, we have a module set up with welcome and resources that has master classes that really go over, like the technology of the Venus cycle, how it works, how it maps onto the chakras, and things of that nature. But I really wanted to just speak in general today. So Venus is in the sign of Cancer right now, and she just had her what we would call her heliacal rise. And this is a very general place on an astrology map. We wait until Venus separates from the sun 10 degrees, and then we can say finally Venus is like not being occulted by the sun's rays anymore, and she's visible, and her influence can now finally hit the planet. And this is just like a huge celebration because the goddess of love is back, right? The goddess of incarnation, wisdom, love, relationships, music, beauty, harmony, like we're finally able to feel her and connect with her again in this very tangible way. And so it is a really big celebration. However, and I've mentioned this before, people who are sky watchers will see that Venus is visible on some places on the earth, but depending on where you are on the globe, what your latitude is, like your altitude, if like you live in the mountains versus a valley. So Venus becomes visible at all of these different times across this month. Okay. So if you go outside in the evening, now she'll be visible after sunset and you don't see her yet. That's okay. I mean, you can keep going out and watching for when she specifically rises by your house, and she'll be visible for everyone on the planet by the end of July. And we have planned a really beautiful meeting, just to check in with Venus, to look at Venus's overall cycle, like what she has in store for us. On the evening star side. I like to have those check-ins, and then also to celebrate Mary Magdalene's feast day, and kind of close out this underworld phase, right? It really is a celebration to rise out of the underworld. And so we want to make sure that we demarcate that time. And so Venus right now is in Cancer. And I have spoken to the fact that, Venus and her cycle, we work with her synodic cycle, and there's 3 planets involved in this kind of like overarching map that we use for Venus's mystery school. So there's the relationship between Venus and the sun. And so that is when Venus makes her original conjunction in her retrograde phase, which she made in August 2023 in the sign of Leo, where she's very close to the earth, right? And so the overarching energy of the 18-19 month whole entire Venus cycle really is this Leo energy. But then she travels around to the other side of the sun and makes a second conjunction with the sun. And this time she did that in Gemini on June 4th of 2024. And this Gemini energy comes in then as like a harmonic, like an undertone, like a supportive, an extra note, right? If we were to think of the astrology as kind of a symphony, I like to think of it as this way because it helps me as an astrologer understand how the planets are working together to conduct or produce a specific song, right? That it's playing for humanity. And we're all kind of like humming along, most of us unconsciously to this song. But the sun, it really is its own specific energy. And when Venus makes these conjunctions, I like to say she kind of goes into the bridal chamber. She's not visible during either of these conjunctions. She's she's in like her own little kind of bubble, and the energy of the sun in astrology we think of as masculine. This is the representation of the light. It is the light. It is the source of the light. And so Venus as a feminine planet, going into this conjunction with the sun, it's like they're in union. They're making love in a specific sign, and so they're birthing a specific harmonic. So we're working with these Leo Gemini codes. And sometime back in the root chakra, so this was back in March, and I was kind of like looking forward and feeling into, and I'm an astrologer who really likes to be inside of the energies when I'm channeling or transmitting them or translating them. So we were back in the root chakra, and this was sometime at the end of March, and we were moving into those shamanic realms. And so, the body was really open, and I'm like, I really want to work with the energy of some of the Egyptian mysteries. This is the Leo cycle. We're moving into the age of Aquarius, which is opposite of Leo. And the Leo age, we know, was very significant for the light codes, and for the age of the solar kings. And I want to work with the energy of the throne and Isis in particular. Her name means throne. And so I just really want to work with the ascending into, as we're looking at how our incarnation fits into the whole, like ascending into this energy of really being grounded on our own throne, eh, and then being able to go out into the cosmos, so that we're not just bypassing. So we're not just going out into the upper chakras and spending a lot of time in the upper chakras without really having a good command over our own domain, our own lineage, our own legacy, and like what we're seeding here, so that we're creating this bridge. And then Gemini has this really awesome kind of set of mysteries that I don't want to delve into too deeply here, but Gemini's esoteric ruler, so like the hidden ruler, the mysterious ruler, is Venus herself. And Gemini in the tarot is ruled by the Lover's card. And there's this really deep mystery around sacred union here, which speaks to that sun, light, and then the feminine coming in and making love to the light. And the feminine is space. The feminine is emptiness, right? She is like that pool of pure potentiality. And then the masculine is how light helps through like this cosmic dance to shape, and then how that is stewarded. And what's really interesting is then we also look at not only where the conjunction happened, but also what is the energy in which Venus rises. And so I've already mentioned Isis and this energy of the throne, and sacred union is really important. And that's really kind of one of the deeper mysteries behind Gemini. And it's not just sacred union between men and women and in relationships, but it's really like how we are in sacred union with all of life, with the entire ecosystem in which we live in, with spirit, with God, with creation itself. And then Venus is rising in the sign of Cancer, and Cancer's got really interesting mysteries. And the ancients thought of Cancer, or they had a different setup. I don't want to get you guys too confused for the astrology chart. It's called the Thema Mundi, or the world chart, right? And so instead of Aries being the rising sign, Cancer was the rising sign. And so we see Cancer as the doorway of man, or the gate of man, and Capricorn, which is across a different axis, it's directly across from Cancer, as being the gateway of the gods. And so Cancer really has this deep connection to incarnation and to the energy of the nursing mother, right? And when we think of with the Egyptian mysteries, the nursing mother, of course, there's that one depiction of Isis feeding Horus sitting on her throne. So that comes forward. But there's also the connection between Cancer and Taurus, and there is an astrological connection in the sense that the moon is rules Cancer and is exalted in Taurus. But that brings in the energy of Hathor, right, into this cycle. And so we'll be working with the mysteries of the nursing mother. What is it to be in relationship with that energy, in relationship, Hathor was thought of to rule like the Milky Way galaxy, and the cow and agriculture and place, right? And so humans were, kind of nomadic and tribal, and they moved around a lot. And then when the Egyptian civilization came online, was in and around the same time that agriculture came in. And so all of a sudden we had the capacity to stay in one place. And Cancer rules domesticity, right? Like our home. And so there's this connection there that I'm seeing. And like, how do we set up our lives, our home, our space. Like if we're going to work with the feminine in the in relationship to the element of space, right? The cosmic body, right? How the cosmos lives and creates through us. It's through this principle of space. Or another way of saying that is emptiness. Now, that sounds very general and maybe a little bypassy. So I want to get in and really flesh out what I mean by that, but just so we understand what I'm talking about right now, I'm talking about this element of space. So that's that pure potentiality that is the feminine and what we can create through that. And so working with the body as the temple, the home or the space that we live in as the temple, what does it mean to root into place? One of my favorite speakers, teachers, um, for the last several years has been a man named Stephen Jenkinson. And one of the things that he notes and speaks about a lot is that, most people who come or were born and raised in the Western world are quote unquote orphans, orphans of place. Like our genealogy and ancestry stretches back to some other place on earth, and we're not deeply rooted in the traditions, the rituals, the ceremonies of place in the way that humans used to be. I mean, think about it. Like if you were to go back to even ancient England, where like my ancestors were from, and you look at the earthworks there and like things like Stonehenge and how there were these gigantic monuments built to map out the connection between the earth and the sky and how their spiritual life was built around the seasons and around the earth. And even the way things were governed around those principles. And people got together and met to celebrate things like the harvest and to share and to work in community. And like I said, in this specific ecosystem with each other, that is such a different reality than the reality we live in now. And so we all carry these kind of like orphan wounds around place. And so what could it mean when we take all of these different energies together to be in sacred union with place, with the earth of our body, with um, the atmosphere, the air, the cosmos, the space of our home where we live, even if we know it's temporary. What does it mean to be in union with that? And what does it mean to be in communion with the land that we live on? And not like I'm thinking about us needing to go out and do like rituals with the land. Of course, we can do those, and I would encourage doing those. Or, I don't, but it's not necessarily that we need to do those. I think what we need to look at is where the separation happened, where the separation lives within us, and how do we begin to alleviate what has resulted from that separation and how that separation has affected our body. And part of this is medicine that's coming through just through my own underworld experience. And I always teach from my life experiences, but obviously as an adoptee, there is an orphan wound in me. And as I've been moving through this experience, I've been using this language like there's a lot of topsoil that I'm moving. So like I noticed that like to get really deep into the root of what was happening in my body, I had a lot of like energetic fuzz on the top, like things that happened that I hadn't fully processed. And so, we have this way that we have been like overusing the soil. It's part of what's kind of the shadow side of agriculture at this point, and how, the topsoil now is depleted of deep vitamins and minerals because it's been, in a sense being raped, right? And how this is a reflection of the feminine, and how, in my own life, because of the way my life is set up and, you know, kids, family, work, all of the things that we have to do to survive, to make our lives live, or to make our lives work. There are these like things that happen that we sort of gloss over, or we don't sit down and fully process, or we don't really allow the full digestion of them to work through us. And then they just kind of hang out in the body field on in the sediment, or on the, in the topsoil. And so I needed to get down to the layer of the subterranean to really begin to work with my body. And when we think about the sign of Cancer, cancer really is about, and we say like there's this connection to agriculture there, um, and the nursing mother, it's about nourishment, but part of nourishment is digestion and elimination. It's that whole cycle. And so we don't only, I remember, one of the first things we learned, I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner in Ayurvedic school, is that we don't just digest our food. We digest every experience we have. And Venus really is this principle of meeting. So it's like, not just how do we meet the world, right? This kind of like, there's this tantric aspect to her. Really, it's one of the most important kind of things to put focus on the Venus path, is like, this tantra with life. Like, how do we show up? How do we meet what happens to us? What's the state of our energy body when we're meeting the world, when we're meeting the day, when we're meeting other people, when we're in relationship, each and every relationship we have, so, and then each and everything either kind of nourishes or depletes us, right, through these experiences of meeting. And then how do we digest that? How do we keep this system plump and nourished, and the soils of our body, field, incarnation? We have all these different bodies, right? We have our human body, and then we kind of have like this etheric or Akashic body. And how do we keep all of those different bodies, the body that communicates with the outer field, the body that is our energetic body, that auric body? How do we keep all of these different bodies nourished and in union with each other, or integrated? Now, that's a huge question. It's a lifelong quest, but it's something that we begin to be curious and wonder about in Sky Dancer. So I'm going to close off here because I need to move on to my next thing. I hope this was useful, helpful information for all of you who have been interested in Sky Dancer and interested in the Venusian mysteries. We will flesh all of this out inside of Sky Dancer. I'm so excited to run this next round. It's going to be phenomenal. And I can already see the ways that it's going to be healing for me, of course, and healing for all of the participants. I have a deep well of faith that every woman who feels called to work with Venus and who steps across the threshold of the Sky Dancer temple, each and every one of those women has deep medicine. She is a priestess in her own right. And we don't all need to be priestessing temples or have large communities. We can be priestesses in our homes. We can be priestesses of sacred medicine. We can be priestesses of art. We can be priestesses of pastoral care. Like, that's a huge one that the world needs right now, and something that we'll talk about when we talk about Mary Magdalene, like just this capacity to show up for the other people, or for the global community. One of the last things I'll say before I get off here, I touched on this briefly, but one of the themes that we'll deal with in Sky Dancer is, so in the age of Leo and the Solar Kings, there was this kind of idea of immaculate conception. And we brought this in a little bit around the end of the last morning star phase. And so it was these women through the sense of immaculate conception, the way Mary gave birth to Joseph or not to Joseph, to Jesus, and Jesus was a solar king, and how Isis gave birth to Horus, and Horus was a solar king, right? So there was this idea that the divine feminine was giving birth to then the next rulers of the earth, right? And Leo really does represent that idea of the solar kings and Christed energy and the radiant heart of the one, right? The one, the exalted one, the lighted one. Well, across from the zodiac is Aquarius, and Aquarius is the age, so the energetic that we're moving into. We're moving out of Pisces, which has been this deep age of shadow and suffering and scapegoating. And, Pisces represents the 12th house. And so as we move out of the age of Pisces, out of this age of shadow, and we move into the age of Aquarius, and there's been this rise of the divine feminine, and there's no mistake, and I'll talk about why this rise is happening, maybe on a public video, but definitely inside of Skydancer. My belief is that we are going to conceive and give birth to a new age of humanity, that our responsibility is to the global family to shape space, consciousness, to the sun is the overlighting symbol of consciousness, but as the mother, as the divine feminine, we help shape and steward that. And so there's a huge responsibility. I no longer see us as giving birth to single solar kings, but giving birth to a new paradigm, a new consciousness, a new mode of leadership that isn't going to be rulership anymore, right? So we'll talk more deeply about that in Skydancer, but I think that was an important thing to bring in because, for all of us who are conscious, we do have a responsibility in the evening star phase of the Venus cycle, which isn't just about us anymore, right? Like we're not just I hate the word belly gazing, but we're not just like concerned with just us. There's this embedded responsibility to kind of really begin to understand why we're here, what our incarnation's about, what we are the priestess of, so that we can work on this sort of like more global ecological level. And by ecology, I don't just mean nature and the earth, although it does mean that, but like, on the web of life that we have influence over, if that makes sense. Okay, I'm going to leave it there for now, and I will touch in with you all soon. All right, loving you. Sorry, if you're interested in Skydancer, I'll put some links below this. Thanks.